But you want to do your Macho Man impression again?
No, you would have to ask me if I was ready, and that's just came to my head when you asked, "Oh, we're ready."
Macho Man Randy Savage, one of many. I mean, I knew Macho Man Randy Savage was in that movie. So hi, we are seriously, Travis. Like we're trying to.
I know.
We're trying to have a professional recording here. Anyway, so this is the third part in our Spider-Man movie. I guess retrospective, with only one part left after this one, and this one is the Raimi Spider-Man films from 2002 through, I don't know when Spider-Man 3 came out, but doesn't matter. Probably like 05, 06, something like that. In any case, I'm Adam, and
this is Travis.
But yeah, so now you had access to all three movies. I did not have access to Spider-Man 2, which is a bit unfortunate because that's the one that I very much dislike. I remember why I don't like it, but in these sort of things, I do like to rewatch them so that I can, have an honest reflection. Like the first Spider-Man movie, I enjoyed more than I thought I would. I never disliked it. I remember seeing it in theaters and liking it, but I think people have a tendency to forget that movies have a time and a place, and these movies are very hammy. We discussed off camera. I think that they're designed to be very campy in the vein of not quite the Adam West Batman show, but in that direction. And I think that rewatching it, especially the first one, that comes through very, very much. But so people have this tendency to be like, Spider-Man 2 is still one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. It's definitely not.
What people really say about this movie, though, to be honest?
Okay. I know you intended that to be special, but I know it's Nickelback, that did not come through.
I was like waiting. I was like, that's the best part of this is the theme songs of these movies.
Sorry.
You can cut that out.
No, I think it's funny that you made an ass of yourself, so that's staying in.
Come on.
Also, you made me edit quite a bit on the last one, so sorry, Travis. Don't do it. Don't do it. The Anyway, so
just let a string of curse words out just now.
Come on, these episodes take quite a bit of time. And we got 3 movies to go through. So the first Spider-Man movie, you and I discussed. The first third to half of it hold up very well.
Yes.
And then the minute people start putting on costumes, it's not good. It's not horrible, but the special effects aren't particularly good. I can't think of his name. The guy that played the Green Goblin.
Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe. His performance is good, but his costume is so Kmart that it really ruins the effect.
Interesting thing about that. I don't know if you ever saw the video, like about maybe 8-10 years ago. They released it showing that originally they were going to do this animatronic face.
I think I heard about that.
And I think it's because when Willem Dafoe signed on to it, and I might be wrong, but he wanted to be able to really emote, instead of just being in a mask. And I think that's why in some of the scenes that you see Willem Dafoe, you see like they'll have the eye covers and then up. There's like different versions of this mask.
And that's the interesting thing is like when it's not the all yellow, when because there's still a lens, but when the all yellow is gone, it still looks bad, but it looks better.
Yeah. And it's also real quick one thing about the Willem Dafoe thing. Also, even though I enjoyed his performance, at some points, I think he was still trying to figure out what kind of inflection or accent he was going to use when he was doing the Green Goblin voice. Because there's like one point where there's a scene where he's talking to Mary Jane. And he sounds like almost Scottish or like something like that, something like very raspy, like hello my dear, something like that. And then he has just a more of a raspy voice later on. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was trying out different things, and it made it into the movie.
But he's one of the better things in the movie, because the casting on this movie is all over the place.
Yeah.
J.K. Simmons is probably the most perfect casting in it. Kirsten Dunst does a good job for what she's assigned. It's not a very Mary Jane, like the character's not right.
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire's horrible.
Yeah.
In this, he actually gets better, but his performance. We'll discuss some of my other problems with the later movies. But
I know what you're gonna bring up, but yeah.
But he's not. He's an okay Peter Parker in the beginning of the movie. His character never grows. He's still kind of the same, like, whiny little bitch. What's her Rosemary Harris?
Yeah.
Is okay as Aunt May. She's not quite right either, but I think that's the script.
I think it's because I think it's part of script and I think it's part Sam Raimi because he is a Spider-Man fan, and I think he wanted to capture his version of Spider-Man from when he was a kid. So you have like an older Aunt May, this older granny Aunt May.
Yeah, but Aunt May was always kind of feisty. This woman's, I mean, it's not her. She's not a bad actress. She's a good actress, but I don't know. She's just kind of there. I do like the actor who plays Uncle Ben. I thought he was very good.
I was gonna say this is probably the best between the movies that actually had Uncle Ben in it. I think he was better than
Martin Sheen.
Yeah, Martin
really?
Sheen. Well, they spent more time on this Uncle Ben than Martin Sheen, if you think about it. And I hope it shows their relationship a little bit more. Like, I can believe Tobey Maguire and oh god, I already forgot his name, but they had a better relationship than, say, Martin Sheen and Andrew Garfield.
You think so?
Yeah.
Well, but he was pretty good. Trying to think if there was any other major. James DeFranco is pretty decent as Harry Osborn.
James Franco or James DeFranco?
DeFranco.
I thought it was just James Franco.
Oh, it is James Franco. Why did I come up with DeFranco? I don't know. James Franco.
Who made an ass of themselves now?
Still you. I'm sorry I'm not all up on pop culture like you are, Travis. In any case, before we move on from the specifics of casting, I did want to mention I was very surprised, and I always enjoy this when I go back and watch older movies. There were 3 actors that I was surprised to see in the movie that I didn't recognize, and they weren't famous at the time. One of them is Jim Norton.
Ted Raimi.
Right. No, I'd seen every other Sam Raimi production up until now, so very familiar with Ted Raimi. But no, Jim Norton is in this. Elizabeth Banks plays Betty Brant, and Flash Thompson is played by Joe Manganiello of what was the stripper? Blood. No, he's mostly known for that stripper movie, Magic Mike.
Magic Mike.
Yeah. He's known for True Blood as well, but it was just kind of funny. You and I had discussed the other actor who played Flash Thompson, not the Indian one, but the Amazing Spider-Man one, was better. But Joe Manganiello was pretty good.
I mean, it's a jerk, this jerk character. Nails that, I guess.
Well, the other actor's given a little more to do. He's given a little more range. Yeah. Joe Manganiello's Flash Thompson shows up in the first part of the movie just to be a jerk and then disappears immediately. Because this movie takes place over a pretty broad range of Peter's life. Like, they don't really... Which is, now that I think about it, it's kind of interesting because his character really needed to grow. Because they went from, like, 3 years of high school to college immediately in the first third of the movie.
Well, no, I think he's supposed to be a senior in high school when all this is happening in the beginning of the movie.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, either way, like, in the comics, like, he was in high school for a good bit, in the original comics. I like Kirsten Dunst as in the role that she's in. She's not a particularly Mary Jane. She's pretty whiny. However,
a lot of daddy issues.
Yeah. Well, her and Tobey Maguire have zero chemistry in the movie. Like, they get better over the course of the series, but in this movie, you don't buy them together at all.
Yeah. Actually, you know what's funny is their famous kiss in this movie. Like, I don't know, are you familiar with the story behind that?
No.
So when they're filming it, keep in mind there's rain. They have a rain effect going on. But when Toby's upside down, he's pretty much like drowning because all that water is collecting in his nose, and he can barely breathe. And they're trying to do a romantic kiss with Kirsten Dunst, and I think it was something like, "Okay, I'm ready," like heavy breathing, and she has to look romantic to kiss him.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's the most iconic scene, arguably, from all three of the movies.
Yeah, that down kiss, and I think they shot several takes of that.
Here's the thing, like, upon rewatching that, so the action in the first one is not particularly good. You could tell that their budget wasn't quite what they needed it to be. But so that kiss starts with a fight scene, all in the rain, and I'd say it's the best fight scene in the movie. Like, it's pretty good. However, and the rain adds to it. However, I feel like, I don't know if it was a producer, I don't know if it was Sam Raimi, but the only reason that was shot in the rain was so you could see Kirsten Dunst topless. There's no point in it. It's pretty...
It's 2 points.
I give you redeemed yourself with that one. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it, but there's no reason for her to be... I mean, she's practically nude in that scene.
Dude, it was the early 2000s. It needed it.
Yeah, so, a Spider-Man movie, you're right. It definitely needed a nude scene.
I mean, there is a softcore porn version just called Spider Babe.
Anyway... So yeah, I mean, pretty exploitative. I'm not somebody who necessarily has a problem with exploitation. I'm happy to use women. However, it's a Spider-Man movie. Really? Why are you so silent?
I mean, dude, it's like, you can't say that kind of stuff nowadays.
What? I mean, I'm happy for them to use me. I'm COVID free, ladies, if you want a bone.
Too bad that's the only thing you're free of.
I posted that on Twitter today. No takers so far. Anyway, I don't know about Spider-Man 2, but we had discussed how impressed I was with the score in Amazing Spider-Man. I noticed Spider-Man 3, the score is not noticeable. When they do sparingly use it, it's effective, but it's kind of, like I said, sparing's a good word for it.
But because it's Danny Elfman, I told you this off camera. Every time I heard it, I kept thinking Batman, the Tim Burton Batman movies. Yeah. Regardless,
we had discussed on one of the previous things we did, John Lord and his ability to hear something and say it's from this composer. And his explanation for it is it's a lot like an artist. Like, when you know that artist's art style, like, in every composer has their style. And so it all kind of sounds alike for a reason. It doesn't sound exactly like the Batman score, but Danny Elfman's scores have very similar usually have the same instruments, and You know. So, I mean, that's not surprising. Let's see. But overall, I enjoyed the movie. I still think the costume's horrible.
Hold up. But here's the thing: it's still entertaining. And you were talking about when this came out. When this came out, I mean, this was coming off maybe a year or two after the X-Men movies.
It was the year after What? No, it might be two. Yeah, X-Men was 2000.
Yeah. Even really, outside of Batman movies in the 90s, there really wasn't for anything for me growing up like a superhero movie like this. So when I saw it in the theaters as a teenager, I absolutely loved it. It's still entertaining. It's just it doesn't really hold up compared to what I have now.
The unofficial start of the comic book era was technically the Blade movies, but most people think of X-Men 1 in 2000. This was the second comic book movie, and it was a big deal. And again, like we discussed Daredevil privately, like, and I think people don't really account for the era that it's in. Like, I'd rather rewatch Daredevil than this movie.
Yeah,
I think even though that movie doesn't hold up as well as it did as I thought it did, it was better than this. Like,
those movies afterwards, because that came out after, obviously.
Not long after. That was like 2004.
Yeah, but this came out in 2000. I want to say 2002. Mm-hmm. So it's not too long after, but it's definitely Daredevil was influenced, is what I'm saying, by even like movies like Ghost Rider. A lot of those mid 2000s superhero movies, with the exception of the Hulk, were I think inspired by the Spider-Man movie.
But that's kind of all I have to say. I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was. Like I said, as you got further into the movie, some of it got a little hard to... Really, honestly, a lot of it was the costumes. Like, the stuff outside of the costumes was fine.
Well, seeing the costume as a teenager coming up, and here's the thing, there's so much background behind this movie in particular, because they were trying to get Spider-Man made for a while. Originally, James Cameron
15, 20 years.
To it. Yeah, you know, it's something that people were talking about, and I remember an issue of Wizard magazine where they talked about this version of the movie was finally coming out, and they started drawing comparisons in the Wizard article to like the Ultimate version of Spider-Man that was out at the moment, because they started talking about organic web shooters and things like that, which I'm not a big fan of the organic web shooters. I like the mechanical ones that they showed for like Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Amazing Spider-Man and Spider-Man Homecoming.
I do want to mention before we move to Spider-Man 2, though, I'd forgotten, like, this movie, it's used appropriately. It's not an overly jokey movie, but the humor's pretty good. A lot of it's Willem Dafoe. His performance really is a highlight of this movie, and it carries a lot of it.
Did I tell you, like, I had that laugh out loud moment, like, when he came in for the Thanksgiving meal, like, after having the fight with Peter, like, he fought Peter as Green Goblin and Spider-Man, and then when he comes in, Aunt May's like, "Oh, what happened?" or something like that. He's like, "Oh, sorry, it was late. Traffic was murder." Like,
I think he said work was murder or something like that, but
murder,
no, he had that, and we had discussed, like, my favorite moment in the movie is when he goes to kill Aunt May, and she's saying the All Father, and she's like, you know, deliver us, and he goes, finish it, and like a Vince McMahon performance.
Have you ever seen Boondock Saints?
No.
There's just one part of it, and people watching this who have seen that movie, he does over-exaggerate, and there's like one line where he's like reenacting scenes that already happened, and he's like, "It was a firefight," and just screaming like that, and getting onto his knees and screaming that. That's Willem Dafoe, like this overacting or chewing on the scenery. That's just him.
But it works whether he's acting in a mirror or in costume.
One of my favorite parts of that is when he does those scenes.
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned it to you. I don't know if you like those. I actually really like those.
I think it's very effective.
I almost think it's. I really wonder if they did those scenes separately, because there's even a really great shot that they had his chair set up by the fireplace, and this is where I think Sam Raimi has that horror background with Evil Dead, and it is a kind of a creepy scene because you have the fireplace, you have the tall chair, and you have the mask, the Green Goblin mask hanging from the chair, and it's very comic book-esque too, the way it was set up, and you hear the voice for the Green Goblin off camera, and then it turns back to Willem Dafoe looking weak, and just that whole switching, that juxtaposition between the two was really great. Those are some of my favorite scenes.
Thank God for you, Peter. Thank God for you. Anyway, so we're gonna move on to Spider-Man 2. You're gonna do most of the talking about this, so I'll just start with my part of it.
Yeah.
I've never liked Spider-Man 2. I remember when it came out, people were like, this is amazing. No pun intended. Like, people love Spider-Man 2. They still do. It's still well remembered. My problems with Spider-Man 2 come down to three things. The first is a little nitpicky, but it definitely shows me that they weren't trying to make these movies. They weren't really putting forth an effort to make these movies better and work on Peter's character or anything. In the opening scene, he's trying to get into a playhouse or a theater on Broadway, and Bruce Campbell stops him. He says it's locked, whatever. So Peter tries to sneak in. He opens a closet door, and it's a broom closet, and brooms fall on him.
Yeah.
He's Spider-Man. He has spider sense. The only reason that's in there is to have like a little Chevy Chase pratfall.
I like how that small thing is what annoys you, but not like there's some other glaring things in the movie that...
I haven't seen the movie in a long time. But, so that's a minor thing, but that set me off on a bad foot for the movie. And again, I really loved the first movie when it was in theaters.
Yeah, but that's not right at the beginning. That's more towards the end of it. I'm sorry, the middle. That's more.
Is it? I always remember it being in the beginning. Well, in any case,
the opening with him delivering pizza.
Okay, well, my memory's faulty, but so the other two things, they're basically kind of hand in hand. This movie to me was basically two things. And I won't act it out like I used to when I was younger, but the whole movie is him pulling his like basically sharing his identity with everybody. And you're supposed to be really touched at that scene on the subway that people remember, where like there's a little black kid and he's like, and they're like, "Don't worry, Spider-Man, we won't tell him who you are." I'm not going to use the words that I want to say, but we'll say bull. That scene is nonsense, but and I get it. I'm a comic book guy. I know there's a joke about too many people knowing Spider-Man's identity. It doesn't work in the movie. It's bad. Like he just constantly taking off. I mean, the movie ends with him like at telling Dr. Octopus, "Hey, by the way, I'm Spider-Man."
There was no reason. I agree with you there. Because here's the thing. Let me take a step back. I like this movie. Mm-hmm. It's one of my favorites of the Raimi trilogy, but I agree.
There's only three.
I agree with you that that part was unnecessary. Mm-hmm. You didn't have to have him with his mask off.
And then the third thing, the other thing that this movie is full of that drove me nuts, was Mary Jane just constantly like, Peter, do you love me? Peter, I love you. If you love me, all you got to do, I'll leave this guy that loves me because I don't really love him. I love you, Peter.
I already said, why should you leave him? He's an astronaut, okay?
And he's not Tobey Maguire. Well, I told you earlier, I think before we started recording, my problem isn't with Kirsten Dunst or Tobey Maguire as actors, but the characters that they're playing are not representative of those characters, and they both whine constantly. Peter is constantly, he's a bitch. And then, like, Mary Jane, it's like, dude, like, grow up. Like, you know, and I know, look, I've got issues personally, but, like, it's just constant whining.
Well, if you're going to say that, you can't leave Harry out of it, because Harry's all whiny about...
At least he gets angry sometimes.
That's one of the plot points of the movie, though, is about Harry wanting to find out Spider-Man's identity, and that's what alienates him from Peter. Mm-hmm. Or Peter, I guess, alienated Harry because he wouldn't give up the information.
Right.
You know?
But that's... because of those things, primarily the last two, I just never liked this movie. And yet, don't get me wrong, Alfred Molina's really good.
Yeah,
I'm not suggesting he's not.
One of the highlights of the movie, to be honest. And even with what I liked about this movie, this is still around the time where you're still using some practical effects. So a lot of times, if you have some the close-up shots when he has the tentacles, those are like puppet arms. Mm-hmm. And I remember because I was so into these movies when they were coming out, listening to like the director commentary or the movie commentary, talking about how he had names for each one. Alfred Molina had names for each one because they all had kind of different personalities depending on who's puppeteering each arm.
One was named 1, 2, 3, and then he had 4, 5, and 6.
Well, there was only 4 of them.
It was a bad joke anyway.
Yeah, I noticed. Anyway, but I think this movie for me, the reason I like it so much is I am a Sam Raimi fan for the fact of he did the Evil Dead movies, and I only found those movies because or found out he was involved with those later on when I was because I was in high school when these were coming out. And I started watching the Evil Dead movies, and I really liked it. And part of his style is he does like to do comedic things. He's a big Three Stooges fan, so you'll see different gags, like the whole broom closet thing. That sounds just like very typical type of gag.
Yeah.
Also good in terms of setting up shots and creating tension. He's really good at. In one of the scenes. It's been a while since you've seen it, but you might remember there's a scene after the accident with Octavius where he's in the hospital and they're about to try to take the appendages off his back. And it goes into full horror mode. And the lights, all of a sudden the arms start moving on their own. It kills all the doctors and everything. Very reminiscent of Evil Dead. So I love that part of it. Very, very fun. And, I don't know, man, I just thought this, as I agree with you, some of the problems the movie had, but it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed Alfred Molina, villain-wise, a little bit more than Willem Dafoe. You had a lot more backstory to him because Peter meets up with Alfred Molina, Octavius beforehand. You meet his wife and realize how important his wife and work is to Octavius, and that's kind of just his motivation afterwards when he comes to. His wife's gone, his work and reputation are ruined, and he wants to continue his work, and that's his whole motivation for the movie. It's it's understandable. However, a gripe I did have about this on a second viewing is after he gets out of the hospital and he wants to continue his work, he's like, well, I'm going to need money to fund my thing. I'm going to go rob a bank. And I was thinking, he's robbing a bank, but why couldn't he just steal the equipment anyway? Who's he going to pay? Who's he going to find to pay with all this, literally all these sacks of money that he got from this bank heist? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But because I guess they just wanted to have that there's a bank scene and a fight between Spider-Man and Doc Ock in this.
Was there a score to Danny? Do you know if Danny Elfman did the score for Spider-Man 2?
Yeah, I believe so.
Because in 3, it's very obvious that they didn't really care much about the score. So I'm assuming Danny Elfman probably wasn't the person who did it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. However, there's one thing. I can't remember if it's the third movie or the second movie where Alex Ross did some intro stuff to it, which was really cool. Some intro art.
That reminds me real quick to go back to Spider-Man 1. This is going deep cut, but I was, Peter, like, weirdly is like this great artist when he's drawing out the Spider-Man costume. And I really want to look it up, but it looked like Tom Lyle, or somebody in his vein did the art on it. I'm very curious, because you would think it would be like a John Romita Jr., especially since, Romita,
Yeah.
But it definitely wasn't.
Yeah, I was just looking. I can't remember if it's because I'm getting confused. Cause I just kind of just skipped ahead because I was trying to in crunch time to watch these. I was just skipping through credits, and I think I did skip through that.
Slacker. Is there anything else you want to say about Spider-Man 2?
You were talking about the train scene. As many problems as I had mentioned already. There's so much fun in that movie, and the fight scene on top of the train is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a comic book. Like almost like a splash page brought to life. And as cheesy as it was for him to be without his mask trying to save the train, that was a huge point in the movie. That was a very climactic part without being the actual climax of the movie. Like I said, it's a lot of fun. I think you had a great villain, and it kind of made me, when I was going to the third one, this will help transition us. I was like, man, I don't know how they could top Doc Ock. And then when they started to announce the actors who were going to be in the third movie, I think the first person I heard was Thomas.
It got better.
Yeah, well,
it is Thomas Hayden Church. Yes,
I do like him, and I do think he's a good actor. And I was like, okay, he's gonna be Sandman. That could be cool. And then they started mentioning, that's what the guy
Topher Grace.
Topher Grace. I was like, he's Eddie Brock. And I was like, oh, well, at least we have, that'll be fine, And then it was like, oh, and also, Harry's officially gonna be the Green Goblin in this. I was like, oh no, I don't know if this could be good anymore.
So, first of all, I think the biggest problem with the Spider-Man franchise is that the actor who played Eddie Brock is a better Peter Parker than the actor who plays Peter Parker.
Yeah, but I think he's a shit, definitely shit.
Come on, dude! What is it? Why do you do this to me?
Which word was it? Was it Eddie Brock when I said?
I will stab you. All right, can we be adults now? I hate you.
It's just a little cursing. It's just
a little cursing. Yes, all right. So anyway, you were saying?
Well, he was a pretty. Can I say the C word?
Probably not.
Not like he was just a horror. He was a poop. He was a. I can't curse. He was a poop Eddie Brock. And
to the degree that everyone's,
He didn't capture the character. He was horribly written. He was freaking annoying as a character. Like you were talking before about how Topher Grace, how Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst and their roles were just annoying the whole time. I felt like this with Eddie Brock.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like he's just obnoxious, and also fighting over a woman who was introduced who the writers didn't care about and I didn't care about, which was Gwen Stacy, Bryce Dallas Howard as Gwen Stacy, who was pointless in this movie.
But everybody's pointless in this movie. Look, I'll start fresh.
Even the butler is pointless in this movie.
This is my favorite of the three films.
Ugh.
Bar none. It is not ironic at all. This is the most enjoyable of the three movies. It is a fun movie. It's not a good movie. I'm not
it's
pretending.
a fun movie. It is a chore to watch this movie.
I had fun. I thought, look, I laughed a lot in this movie. Now,
yeah, I laugh at bad movies too.
But here's and this is why it sucks when studios interfere. If they had stuck with two villains, you could have made something. The problem is this movie is like 3 good movies and a bad movie shoved into one. And you never know, like, which of the movies you're in is scene by scene. Because, like, the whole thing...
Sam Raimi had his vision,
mm-hmm.
and he wouldn't let go of. The executives had their vision, and they didn't want to let go of theirs either.
Right. And that's a tradition. Like, these movie studios are like, we need it bigger, so add more villains. Like, you know, Batman and Robin had 3 or 4 villains, you know, and Bane was like an afterthought, you know, but you forget that plots exist as you're watching the movie because they don't fit together. So, like, I actually like Gwen Stacy. I thought Bryce Dallas Howard actually looked really good and, like, did a decent job at that version of the character. Look, none of these characters are like the comic book characters. Like, none of them. With the exception of J.K. Simmons. He's a perfect J. Jonah Jameson. Still is. But, you know, like, Captain Stacy's in this. And they bring in, like, a major actor, James Cromwell, to play him. And he's in, like, 2 scenes. And that's it. Like, he's barely on camera. There's no reason for Captain Stacy to be there. You know, there's all this stuff shoved in there.
Yeah.
And I got the impression that Sam Raimi really stopped caring early on, because, like, there's very sloppy scenes in this movie, and he's definitely a better director than that. I feel like he was just like, whatever, put it in. This isn't the movie I want to make.
Yeah, I think he gave up, and I think I was telling you, I actually didn't finish this. I went in my rewatching, because I went halfway on it. Remember I was telling you off the phone, I was like, once you said, you know what, I'll talk more about it, I was like, oh, thank God, I don't have to watch that, the rest of that. And if I will say this, and I'll agree with you, the ending fight is pretty cool, and it's entertaining, but I did, like, all I would have done was just fast skipped ahead just to get to that, if I was going to continue.
I love so much, there's so many enjoyable parts of the movie. Again, doesn't mesh.
Or Green Goblin. That's a really cool thing. I love the whole skateboarder look. That's amazing.
I didn't like the glider. I thought the original glider looked better, but the costume that they gave Harry was obviously, you know, a major step up.
I honestly, I would have appreciated more if it looked more like the Green Goblin from the first movie. If they were going to keep it, they might. If they were going to go in that route, I thought they should have kept it.
I don't think so. I think the costume just looked too cheap. But I laughed a lot in this movie. I was telling you earlier, there's a scene where J. Jonah Jameson is talking to Robbie Robertson, Peter, and Brock, and Betty Brant, still played by Elizabeth Banks, keeps buzzing him. And as it's clearly intentionally a joke, they use this comically insane buzzer system where whenever she buzzes him on the intercom, the desk starts, like, shaking and like things start flying. And it's one of those, like, rules of 3 thing. She just kept doing it, and by the end of it, I was, like, falling down laughing.
I will admit that too.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say something missed, because I was about to bring up Bruce Campbell in this movie. Bruce Campbell is one common thread that's in all of these movies, from the announcement in the first one, to the doorman at the theater, to the French waiter who was to help Peter propose in this movie.
The French waiter's my favorite.
Yeah, that's what I was going to admit. Like, you know, there's certain comedy things, like, Bruce Campbell is a fun actor. He's great in bit parts. And this is one of those ones that's like, he's doing the weird French accent, of course, and playing it up. Apparently, there's also some theory, though, that because he was supposed to play Mysterio in the fourth movie, if it was to come out, and that it was all that was the same person throughout. I don't know if it was supposed to be, I can't think of his name at the moment.
Chameleon?
No. The Mysterio's real name.
Oh, escapes me at the moment.
Yeah.
There's no way, because that would mean that he was randomly. Yeah, none of that makes sense. But
elaborate.
Also, it would make more sense if he was the Chameleon rather than Mysterio. Like Mysterio's thing wasn't dressing up as other people, but. Again, there's way too much shoved in this movie. There's things that definitely take me out of it. When Peter goes to save Gwen Stacy from the building, there's this forced scene where he's talking to Mary Jane. They're like, the crane's out of control, and so this crane starts moving, and
man, Spider-Man in these cranes, huh?
Well, it's funny
breaking operator go like, because save my kid.
Because they're swinging around this pylon, and you're like, okay, I can see how that could cause damage, but no, somehow the crane becomes magically like 2 times as long and swipes twice through the building and like rips chunks out of it. And I'm like, what's going on? And then Peter saves her, and he doesn't stop the crane. I'm like, well, what happened with the crane? Is it still spinning? Later there's a scene where Thomas Hayden Church, and I feel bad for him because he was trying his best because he's adding gravitas. He's got this serious plot in this very unserious movie.
And he's you're very sympathetic towards him because they set it up, and they continue that throughout the whole movie. And then they're like, okay, well, I'm gonna fade away now. And go literally dust into the wind.
So his whole thing throughout the movie is he's trying to save his daughter. And he's stealing money, which, by the way, he never saves his daughter. He never gets that money. The daughter dies at the end of this movie. For sure.
I was about to say, they obviously don't show, but you could just assume, he never got the money to help his daughter.
And by the way, the wife who's all mad, it's like, okay, he's trying to save your child.
Let's think about this. We were talking about how the studios were interfering. Sam Raimi or whoever's writing this movie should have stepped up and streamlined things because there's so many different little plot threads going on. So you have not only Marco's whole thing with trying to do stuff for his daughter, but you have his thread with Peter and Aunt May because you find out that he was involved in Uncle Ben's death. Mm-hmm. Then you have Peter and Harry coming to grips, because after Harry found out that he was
Spider-Man
in the second movie.
You have Dr. Connors with the you have Dr. Connors introduced. The whole reason that Gwen Stacy is his lab partner.
He was introduced in the second movie, though.
Okay, but his only intro into this movie is Gwen Stacy's his lab partner, and that's just so they can bring him in later without having to introduce him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she's a random thread. You have Eddie Brock thrown in there. You have Mary Jane and Peter's relationship, because in the second movie, she's starting to get work and recognition, and he's just having a crap time in terms of his life, right? And then in this movie, the tables flip, and people love Spider-Man now, but Mary Jane's having a poor time acting, so she's feeling distant from Peter. Mm-hmm. So there's that whole thing. There's Harry loses his memory and starts to be friends with Peter again, but then regains his memory and tries to mess with their relationship. There's so much happening,
and somehow convinces her to break up with him.
Yeah,
lets her go, and she's just like, okay, I'll go along with this.
You want to hear something crazy about James Franco in this movie? There's that kid.
I think you mean James DeFranco.
Oh, sorry, James DeFranco.
Sorry,
apparently he really wanted to look like he actually knew what he was doing when he was cooking with Mary Jane.
Oh, God. And then there's that.
He actually hired cook or chefs to train them, to show them how to actually cook, so they could have better prep for this one scene that was pointless in this pointless movie. I
really hope that's why he tries to do the omelet flip.
That's why.
And
yes.
And I'm really hoping that what happened was he missed it, and they decided to go with the outtake rather than letting him do it. But people remember the Peter dancing in this movie. I had completely forgotten, but he and Mary Jane have a dance sequence, and it is ludicrous. Like, they just start randomly, like, she's sad, she's going in for comfort, and they're like... So, what makes me laugh, too, is, like, it's not quite a continuity error, but there's a scene where... Because you gotta have the butler doing things occasionally, so that he can have his climactic scene. But, he's just like, Bertrand, I have company coming over, get some food. And he's like, you got company coming over? And he's just like, just get the food. Bertrand never gets food, though. So he's just like, let's make an omelet. So they go to make omelets, and then, like, he turns on the radio, you know, and they're just like, let's start doing the twist.
Yeah, like I said, there was a lot of stuff, and I might be wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if he hired someone to also show them to dance, too, because that's how weird James Franco was for this.
Not just, I mean, James Franco's a weird dude, but,
Franco. Boy, can you edit that in? Can you just edit the Frank D?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend all my time editing James Franco to James DeFranco. You know what?
Ready? DeFranco.
Okay, anyway.
Franco.
I gotcha. But the whole, you know, I was telling you earlier, part of the reason I love this movie is the whole douchey Spider-Man sequence, like from start to finish. Huh?
Which one? There were so many.
Okay. Evil Peter, the whole Evil Peter sequence where he starts reveling in it, and he's like jazz dancing and stuff like that and doing the hustle.
Like I told you,
that is hilarious.
They're like, the movie producer's like, how do we show that he is, like, how do we physically show that he's evil now? Well, we can't give him a mustache, like the twirl. Oh, let's do a hair flip, an emo haircut. That's what's in right now.
Oh.
So they cut the guy from Fall Out Boy's hair and then grafted it onto Tobey Maguire's scalp so he could look evil in this movie.
I think you're missing the point. Tobey Maguire is the guy from Fall Out Boy. You've never seen them together in the same room. Anyway, I love that whole thing. It's fun. It's hilarious.
It's so cringy.
It's not. It's intentionally hilarious. Like I was telling you, the part where he walks out of the suit store, the haberdashery, and he starts doing the hustle, and people are staring. In the context of that universe, like there's music on the movie. In the context of that universe, there's no music. He's just randomly like gyrating.
The symbiote works as an iPod.
Huh?
You didn't know the symbiote works as an iPod?
No, I didn't know that. Also, by the way, I like you can tell this movie didn't have enough budget for what they were trying to do, and this was like a heavily CGI movie that didn't work in most sequences.
There's practical stuff in it.
There's a lot of CGI though. It's very bad and very noticeable.
So like, there's some combination stuff. So like, even though it's mainly CGI, the part where Eddie is getting the symbiote thrown on him, they were actually filming that. If you look at his face, they actually had these things rigged up to his face to push and pull to simulate it. So like when you see that his face is getting moved around, and the symbiote, like his face is actually moving around, it's not CG.
That's not what I'm talking about though. I'm talking about just like random sequences of Peter web spinning.
Oh, that was probably easier. It was probably way easier for that to just do instead of like...
I got you, but it doesn't look good. It looks terrible.
Well, you say that, but if you go back to the first movie, there's a fight scene in particular in the first movie where he's trying to get photos to sell Spider-Man to Jonah. And that whole scene, with the exception of the bad guys, it was a CG Spider-Man fighting those guys.
I think it looks better in that than it does in this movie.
Okay.
Well, I mean, but this movie had a lot more. This movie had a lot more. Like, you can tell where they put their effort. They put a lot of effort into the CG for Sandman, and that was mostly effective. Probably until the big fight scene, you could tell was wearing a little thin. But like particularly when it's just when they're on the subway, and it's Peter versus Flint, that CG looked really good.
That was a cool scene when his head was held against the subway train. Mm-hmm. And also, what was practical was the part where Peter undoes like the I guess the water main or whatever and washes out Sandman. That was all real for that scene. Mm-hmm.
But the reason I brought up the CG was because they obviously didn't have enough budget to have the suit cover Peter, so he would just wear the costume. Like, the symbiote didn't really move. It was just a costume until he becomes Venom later. But I like a lot of stuff. Now, I have no interest in...
the black suit was a lot cheaper to make if it was just a black dyed Spider-Man suit. Mm-hmm.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I don't think it would have made a lot of sense if they did like the Mike Zeck design. If they did with the white spider emblem and just black.
I mean, that's what they did with the Venom costume. Like, he doesn't get any bigger. They keep his mask the same. They just, like they made it look like the black costume.
Yeah.
But
you still got the texture, though, of the Spider-Man suit. If you look close, you still got the same texture.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to watch this movie a lot, but if you ask me, like, which of the ones, if I had to watch one of them, I'd rather watch this one. I think their performances are better. I think there's a lot more actual enjoyment out of it. And like I said, I laughed a lot. Like, the whole sequence where Peter's evil and he's just loving it. That's the first time in any of these movies that I buy Tobey Maguire's performance. The rest of it, I don't buy.
This is why you think Long Kiss Goodnight is a good movie.
I will stab you.
If you want to watch a good female assassin movie, watch Kill Bill. You don't need to watch that Drek.
I hate you. Anyway. But yeah, not a great movie, but fun. And I'm okay with it.
I mean, they're entertaining. Now, granted, I shat on the...
Just go on.
I didn't say
just go on. Go on.
Anyway, I pooped all over the third movie, but they were entertaining. And the thing is, I remember walking out of the theater for Spider-Man 3, and I've told you this story a couple of times. It's like I felt like how I was after walking out Batman and Robin, and I was trying to justify seeing it, and that was like, Batman and Robin was the first movie I can remember where I didn't like a movie. Like, because when you're a kid, you like almost every movie you see to a certain point. Mm-hmm. And, I was like, Batman Forever, amazing, then you go Batman and Robin. I'm talking about as a kid. And then I'm like, my mom took me to see it. I was like 9 or 10, and she goes, "What'd you think?" And just so you know, she had told me like way afterwards, like that she hated the movie. But I was like, I don't know, I don't think I liked it. And it was really weird. And I felt like that for the Spider-Man movies because I had told you I liked the first one, loved the second one, and then when the third one after that, I'm like, yeah, that wasn't great. Like, I want to like it so bad just because I like the first two. I wonder if that's how people, like, for the MCU movies feel, because we've talked about this at length about some of the Avengers stuff, and people talk about how amazing every MCU movie is.
Can I tell you, there was a Twitter hashtag today, Name 5 Perfect Movies, and first of all, I don't know if those people understood what perfect movie means, but one person put Avengers Endgame, and I was like, I understand you like the movie. You think that's a perfect film?
A perfect film at all.
You know, I don't know.
Right.
I don't think perfect films exist, but you know, I think you just have favorite movies where you forgive the flaws. Amazing Spider-Man. I really like that movie. I forgive the flaws because I really enjoy it. You know, but
I think you talk about forgiving. In the Spider-Man 3, there's just so much in there. I couldn't forgive it in a sense. Like I was entertained in certain parts, but it was just the majority of it. Just I guess when you average it all out for me, it just wasn't a good movie.
Spider-Man 3 falls under the same category as Phantom Menace. I don't pretend it's a good movie. It's a horrible representation of a Spider-Man film. But I enjoy it, you know, for what it is. Like there's so many flaws in this movie that I just ignore everything because it's just like, why would I nitpick at a movie like? I mean, there's literally a scene where Peter makes out with another woman in front of the girl he's trying to marry, even though like they just had a fight, like 2 days, like a major fight, like he was going to propose to her, she left. And then the next thing you know, like in front of her on camera, he makes out with Bryce Dallas Howard. Like, you know, like this is a movie where things like that happen for no reason. So I just, you know, but you know, everybody has their own thing. I just find this to be the most enjoyable because I could tell Sam Raimi stopped caring too. Like he was just, you know, I appreciate when filmmakers are like, look, what we're about to make is trash. You know, like Sharknado. Like nobody's gonna make a serious Sharknado movie. They were just like, let's just make this as fun as possible. Like, let's not take ourselves too seriously. There's nothing to be done here. So,
well, I'm kind of glad they did end it with this movie because there was a planned fourth one that was going to involve the Vulture, and there was some pre-production on it. But in the ending, for the ending of the third movie, I think was fitting. So you tied up everything with Harry and Peter and Mary Jane are together. The end of that trilogy.
Yeah, Harry's dead. Eddie Brock's dead.
However, Sony is crazy enough to do stuff like, especially if they clone stuff. I think I was telling you, if there was an Amazing Spider-Man 3, they were going to bring back Gwen Stacy as a clone, and she was going to become Spider-Gwen.
Yeah, I'm glad that didn't happen, but... So, I don't know if there's any... Oh, like I said, like, there was no noticeable score in this movie. It just... I really got the impression everybody was just like, let's just do whatever. But, so, the last Spider-Man movie that we're going to do, and we're not doing it today, obviously, is Into the Spider-Verse, and, pretty handily, not only the best... I think it's the best media representation of Spider-Man, except maybe for the Spider-Man video game, Marvel Spider-Man. That's pretty close to this. But
I could talk about at length about the art, even the art style in that movie that that Sony animation pioneered with the halftone stuff that they did for textures in that movie. I'm
glad you brought that up because what we're gonna do. We're going to do this in the same way we do the Art Convos videos. I am going to... Okay, C Cleaner. I don't need to know that. I had a pop-up from C Cleaner on my thing. We're going to do... I'm going to... Because I have the art of Into the Spider-Verse. So, I'm going to send you some of the art, and we'll discuss that. That'll probably be a very long episode, because there's a lot to talk about. I have nothing but love for that movie. I don't know if I have a bad thing... Perfect movies, that's pretty close for me.
Boy, I honestly, at this moment in time, I can't think of a negative thing to say about the movie.
So,
even if I rewatch it, I just rewatched it the other, maybe about, I had to say the other day, it was probably a month ago, because it was right before quarantine and everything kind of started. Yeah. So
it's on Netflix. I own it. I bought it immediately when it came on DVD and Blu-ray.
And what's funny is it was under. I think it didn't perform as well as the other Spider-Man movies compared to live action.
Well, it wasn't marketed very well.
I don't think they understood what the movie was to even market it.
They didn't, and they also put it out in December, which is one of those months where you put a movie to watch it die.
Funny enough, if you think about when that came out, that was right after Aquaman was out.
Oh yeah, I think that was his competition.
Aquaman, which made $1 billion, which I can't wrap my mind around. I could do a whole episode talking about how bad Aquaman was.
We've been trying to keep these positive, and and I realize this is probably the most negative of the Spider-Man movies we've talked about. But
I was negative just about the third, and you were on the second one in terms of you talking about negativity.
Right, but I mean, I think overall, like I enjoyed these movies.
Okay.
I just had my problems with them, but we might have to do Aquaman because that movie is kind of astounding. I know why it made money. It's because Jason Momoa looks amazing.
Amber Heard did too. In the mirrors too, yeah.
I don't.
I hated the red hair that she had, but
the red hair was distracting, and I love real redheads, but that almost pink hair, like it. Anyway, so Enter the Spider-Verse is next, and we're gonna have a lot of fun with. We'll probably do that next week.
Real quick, Aquaman connection to Spider-Man. Willem Dafoe is an Aquaman as well.
Yes, and he's not as good as he is as Green Goblin, but he's pretty good in that. Willem Dafoe's a great
Aquaman. Thank God for you. Arthur,
Ocean Master. Real quick, we forgot to mention maybe the most bizarre moment in Spider-Man 3. When Bertrand, the butler, has this little soliloquy, like, that comes out of nowhere. He's just like, Harry, I loved your father, but he killed himself.
Also, terrible actor. I don't know who that was.
But he has this whole thing, like, he is nobody throughout these 3 movies, and then, like, in that one scene, they're like, we need Harry to convert quickly for no reason, and Bertrand's just like, I love you, and he's like, alright, I'll go help him.
Yeah, you had no context of who this person is, and it was a waste.
They just needed a quick, I mean, like I said, people just gave up on this movie.
Also, he was like, oh, by the way, I already knew since the first movie that Peter didn't kill your dad. I just thought I'd let you know right now because you're starting to look kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hate to go into this, but his excuse too is like, I cleaned the knife wounds from his chest, and it's just like, he was dead. Like, why would you clean his knife wounds?
Wanted to go a little. You like that? You like that, Norman?
All right, and on that note, we'll see you on the next one.
All right.
You can find all the places to find us below. Thank you.